to the Landscape Ontario podcast. I'm Scott Barber. Thanks so much for listening. On this episode, we are talking chainsaw safety with Todd Fritzley. Todd is an arborist with the Grand River Conservation Authority, and he's also the owner of BPF Safety and Consulting. Todd has over 15 years experience in forestry and arboriculture, and he's going to dive into the laws and regulations that govern chainsaw use in the workplace, as well as some of the main hazards and most common chainsaw injuries, and finally, why PPE and training are so important. That is coming up next. The Horticulture Technician Apprenticeship Program is a post-secondary education and skills development program recognized as a Red Seal trade in Canada. It's aimed at employers who have employees who want to make horticulture and landscaping their career. Earn while you learn. Attend an info session to know more at horticulturetechnician.ca/events. So, Todd, could you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Well, I've been involved in both the forestry and tree care industry. I started off by going to school at Sir Sanford Fleming. I graduated from the forestry technician program there in that would have been 2006. No, I'm sorry, that would be 2005. And then I returned for another year to take urban forestry in arboriculture, and finished that program up in 2006. So, a total of 3 years at Fleming as a student, and that's kind of where I got my start, at least from a, summer work experience point of view, doing summer contract work, that sort of thing. And, sort of started off my career more in the forestry end of things. I did a few seasons of wildland firefighting with the OMNR out of the Sudbury district, and then moved on out west to Alberta to do a season out there. And that's where I got my my introduction, to the world of hands-on forestry work. And then I sort of started looking at, forestry and trees in general, sort of more on an individual basis. And that's when I really started to take an interest in more of the tree care and arboriculture side of things. But I've always wanted to work outside, and I was just naturally drawn to the forestry and tree care industries. So, it wasn't long before I sort of changed thinking a little bit, and, kind of got tired of sleeping in a swamp. And, so I really started taking interest in tree care, and sort of started running with that. And once I was done school, I got involved right out of the gate with a small scale tree care company, and was there for about a year. Learned a lot, and then I took an opportunity with as an arborist with the Grand River Conservation Authority, which is where I actually still reside today for work. And that would have been 07, 08. Been there ever since. And it was in 2017, I decided to sort of start my own little thing on the side, if you will, as a teacher, as a safety instructor for the forestry and arboriculture industry. And my primary focus is chainsaw use. So chainsaw safety, tree cutting safety. That's what I specialize in. And I always had sort of a knack for teaching, and I've always wanted to teach and show people how to, do their jobs safer, more efficiently. And I kind of felt like I was at a point in my career as well where, I've been in this, this game long enough where, I really felt that I could, pass what I know on to others. So it's been quite a journey. I mean, like I said, since roughly, 2006, Till now, I'm an ISA certified arborist. I'm an ISA certified tree risk assessor. I actually, in 2014, I completed an online certificate program with the University of Guelph for environmental conservation. So, I wanted to get a little bit of university credentials under my belt as well. And it's been a really interesting ride. I've been very fortunate to, in my opinion, literally work with the best in the business, at least from an Ontario perspective. And I was actually very fortunate to work with these types of people very early on in my career as well, which I think was a big help. I wasn't in the industry too long before, I started working with these certain individuals, and I learned right away just how incorrectly I was doing things. So I've been fortunate to be corrected on a lot of things and, taught the right way, if you will. So, and again, especially when it comes to chainsaws and tree cutting safety on the job, that sort of thing. So, so my business, BPF Safety and Consulting, that's what I specialized in. Again, is chainsaw safety. We started up, made everything official, in 2017, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great experience so far. Probably the coolest thing about that aspect of my career, if you will, is all the different industries I get to work with. And actually, the biggest one being landscapers. They're probably my number one area of clientele. And I've worked with landscapers all over the province. And I've been fortunate to work with you folks at Landscape Ontario, doing some courses for you guys. And just all the different industries I get to work with, all the different people I get to meet. I am a full service, traveling outfit, if you will. So, I have a local site where I put on courses near Guelph here where I live, but again, I can also bring the program to the client. So I'm able to stay mobile and, I'm a full service operation, equipment, materials, everything is provided. So, it's been, when I think back to whatever it is, 15 plus years or so, whatever it is, it's gone by in a flash for sure, but that's sort of myself, I guess, in a nutshell.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate
what I do.
No, it sounds like it's been a great career so far. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do with the Conservation Authority? Like, what does a typical day or week or month look like?
Right. Yeah. So I'm part of a tree management crew for the watershed. And more of the watershed than really anybody else in the company, really. We're all over the place. So the bulk of what I do and what we do in our department is we handle and mitigate all of the hazard tree risk in the watershed. So we target a lot of the sort of more sensitive and high traffic areas when it comes to public safety. So for example, we do a lot of work on like we have a lot of parks and campgrounds throughout the watershed. So we manage any of the hazard trees throughout our parks, our trail systems as well. And we also have cottage lots on both Bellwood and Conestoga Lake. I don't know if you're familiar with those two lakes, but we have a series of cottages around both lakes that we're in charge of the hazard tree work on those lots as well. So we get to travel around a lot. We work in a lot of different areas of the watershed, but the bulk of what I do is hazard tree mitigation on GRCA lands. So as you can imagine, and still ongoing, the bulk of that over the majority of my career there has been the ash borer, removing a lot of the dead and declining ash trees. But yes, and I also get involved a little bit in the spring season with the planting projects, the planting season. So sometimes that's a nice little bit of a change of gears, if you will, and get involved with working with the public and, putting trees into the ground. And I also, along with our professional forester, we're in charge of the injection program for ash trees on GRCA lands. So myself and that individual, we're certified to apply the insecticide treism to the ash trees that we have chosen to try and preserve and save. So that's a program that I'm heavily involved with as well. So we have a select number of ash trees in different areas of the watershed, both in our parks, trail systems, and our cottage lots that we are currently treating to, help keep alive, and whether it be for future seed sources or just in general, it'd still be nice to have some ash trees around, because as you know, they're getting fewer and fewer every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's those are sort of the key areas of what I do with the Conservation Authority as an arborist. We're all involved with keeping our GIS system up to date. So we actually have a GIS system that we work with, where we actually track all of the hazard trees, all of the injected ash trees, and what have you throughout the entire watershed. So we can pull up the watershed up on a map, and any tree that we have worked on or are currently working on or preserving, etc., we all keep track of on a GIS map system, which is kind of cool. So, we get involved with a little bit of inventory work, if you will, of tracking all of the trees. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Let me go back to your work with the safety and chainsaw safety, and ask you about what are some of the regulations and laws that govern chainsaw use in the workplace?
Well, first off, that's probably one of the most confusing things for many industries and employers when it comes to chainsaw use in the workplace. First off, there's still a lot of people out there that don't even realize that there actually are laws and regulations when it comes to using a chainsaw on the job. It can be a little bit of a touchy subject. Again, a lot of people are still oblivious to it. And even though maybe there are some folks out there that are at least even a little bit aware of it, unfortunately, it still goes ignored. Which from a safety standpoint, obviously is not a good thing. So when it comes to the laws and regulations that are out there, where you can find them is within the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or what we most commonly call the Green Book. So there's a couple sections of the Occupational Health and Safety Act where you can find regulations in regards to chainsaw use. And I guess when it comes to landscapers, the two areas where you're going to find those regulations are under the industrial establishments as well as construction. So depending on what your landscaping company is, the type of job task they're performing or whatever type of project they're on, that can sort of determine if a chainsaw does come into play on that job site, depending on what they're doing. Should there be an accident, it could vary sort of where what regulations will be put in place to enforce that, the use of that tool. So for example, I guess if you're a landscaper, doing something more on the construction side of things, whether that would be, some fence work, maybe you're cutting fence posts to size, you're using a chainsaw, that sort of thing. Should there be an accident, you could be, that's where maybe the construction side of things would come into play. Whereas if you're, removing a small amount of trees on a lot, or shrubs or that sort of thing, to open up some space or whatever the case may be, and, should an accident follow, those sorts of work practices, and maybe you'd be thrown more into the industrial side of things. So it's kind of, it can be kind of confusing to some, and that's, I do wish the ministry would do a better job of, making things just a little bit more clear, I guess you could say, because where a lot of the confusion comes in is that, you have industries that don't use chainsaws like hardly at all, or even on a regular basis by any stretch. So they often feel like they don't fall under, some of these areas of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So it's just like, you could have a landscaping company, removing a small amount of trees to open up space to put a deck in on the back of a house or something like that. And then there's an accident, and an investigation ensues. And, now they're being charged, say, under the industrial establishments or even the logging regs. It's like, well, we're not a logging company, we're a landscaping company. But the job you're performing at that time could be classified as more of a logging type operation, which is found under those industrial establishments. So, I hope I'm being as clear as possible here, but as you can see, it can be quite confusing for a lot of individuals sometimes. And, obviously at the end of the day, the number one goal is we don't want people, we want everyone to go home at night, intact to their loved ones. And so, safety is paramount, but it can be difficult to put those proper safety measures in place when, often when there's confusion around, okay, well, is what we're doing classified as this or as that? It's unfortunately, chainsaw use in the workplace when it comes to the law is, I've always sort of described it as a gray area, if you will, where unfortunately it often doesn't come into play until there actually is an accident, which is unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
So depending on the industry, chainsaw certification and, proof of competency and training, that sort of thing, depending on the industry, whether that would be, like I mentioned, logging, or, my industry as tree care workers, having a chainsaw, having proper chainsaw training and credentials is, sort of a no-brainer, and it's expected. Whereas folks like yourselves in the landscaping industry, it's a little bit more of a gray area, right? And often it's not enforced until it's too late and there's already been an accident.
Right.
And then, there's an investigation, someone shows up on site to questions start getting asked, where's their proof of training, their certification, etc. And everyone's kind of standing around scratching their heads. So, but at the end of the day, of course, ignorance isn't an excuse either. So it's important to know all these trades out there, including landscapers, that, they need to be aware that the laws and regulations in regards to chainsaw use, they are found within the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and it is in their best interest to read up on those and know what's what and know what's required. So yeah, a lot of confusion, unfortunately. It's like I said, it for a lot of people, it tends to be a gray area. I just think sometimes a lot of businesses would be better off if things were a little bit more clear and easier to understand in terms of like to give you another example, within most industries, especially in the trades, like everyone knows you need first aid, everyone knows you need working at heights, etc. But a chainsaw is one of those things that kind of gets put on the back burner, if you will, right? It's just like, well, if you're a company that's, pulling out a chainsaw half a dozen times or less a year, it's probably not something you tend to think about in terms of having proof of training and competency, right? So, I guess look at it as not even as a safety standpoint to keep your workers, health and safety in check, but also, from a legal standpoint, if you want to avoid any, hefty fines or warnings or charges, whatever the case may be, if chainsaws are getting used within your business, within your company, then it's definitely something you need to look into in having the proper documentation in place. So
For sure.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I appreciate that overview. I think it's really helpful.
Right.
So how common are chainsaw injuries?
They're more common than you think. And that's another thing with a lot of workplace accidents, again, especially in the trades, is they're more common than you think. And then just a lot of accidents in general tend to get swept under the rug. Because they don't want to, they don't want the ministry getting involved or whatever. But it's the bottom line is, and this is what I tell my students, and basically how I open every training course I do, is I open with this statement, basically telling them that this literally is the most dangerous power tool you will put in your hands. And the first step in preventing an incident while using that machine is thoroughly understanding how it works. And so, until you can really wrap your head around that, it's very easy to become injured from a chainsaw. So, they are more common than you think. Unfortunately, the stuff that you do come across or do hear about is the stuff that only makes the media. But don't be fooled. There's thousands of incidents happening out there, whether they're more on the minor side, or, something where somebody ends up in a merge. There's a lot of incidents going on out there that go unheard of. And, whether it's employers not properly documenting or reporting them or whatever, but, people need to realize as well that, when there is an incident, unfortunately, when it comes to incidents and accidents, like, I understand, like, as human beings, I mean, it can be something that is, embarrassing, something that we may tend to not want other people to know about, that sort of thing. I mean, I think that's just, those are just natural feelings to have. But on the flip side of that, and we were taught this when I was in school, when I was in arborist school, was making these incidents, or using these incidents as an education tool, whether that would be for fellow tree workers or landscapers or otherwise. I think it's important that, we obviously don't want to give away intimate details about people's information and who they are and that sort of thing. But if we can just sort of generally summarize how these accidents are happening, why they're happening, the types of workers they're happening to, I think it's important to make that information more public, just for the simple reason of just making fellow workers more aware, and to, maybe give them something to think about when, they pick up that chainsaw and they go to start cutting up this giant oak that fell on the side of a house. It's like, maybe that's something that's just completely out of your wheelhouse, and, it might make them think about, what happened to that other guy or woman or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's, I don't view it as so much as something that, people need to be ashamed of. I think if we can learn from these incidents and help decipher and explain why they're happening and how they're happening, I think in the long run, I think that's going to prevent more of those incidents from happening in the long run. So,
yeah. What are sort of the main hazards? What are some of the most common things that you see or hear about?
Probably one of the most common, like, hazard in chainsaw operation in terms of the machine itself is rotational kickback. I don't know if you're aware of that, but going back to what I said before, and having a good solid understanding of what that machine is doing when that chain makes contact with the material. And this is what I tell my students. This is what I teach my students. Like, until you can wrap your head around that, I believe that's the first step in protecting yourself from that piece of equipment. It's not your PPE. All that stuff is important, and we can get into that. But if you understand how that machine works and what it's actually doing when it makes contact with the material, that will make you just a lot more aware and prepare yourself better for an incident such as a rotational kickback. So, there's 4 reaction zones of the chainsaw bar, where the chain is spinning around the guide bar, and we teach a system called push, pull, no go. And we take that bar and chain and we break it up into 4 different sections of reactional forces. So we know we can cut with the top part of the bar, we know we can cut with the bottom part of the bar, but where we need to take or where we need to pay close attention is the bar nose tip, the sprocket tip at the end of the bar, where that chain is going around that bar nose. And we divide that section of the bar into what we call the no and the go, which is essentially the top quadrant and the bottom quadrant. And it's that top quadrant that we call the no zone, or the kickback zone, is what we want to be aware of. And that's where the chain makes its rotation around the top quadrant of that bar nose. Should that make contact with the material, or in this case, the tree, the wood, or whatever it is we're cutting, that's what causes the rotational kickback. So, forgive me, this is very difficult to explain without actually showing you like diagrams, but just sort of, the gist of it is, we need to, as operators with rotational kickback, we need to, constantly be aware of where that bar tip is when we're making our cuts, especially if we're dealing with piles of branches and trees, whether it's storm damage or that sort of thing, right? So, when it comes to the actual machine itself, definitely rotational kickback plays a big role in the incidents and the accidents and what have you that are occurring out there. And just quickly, with again a little bit further with the actual saw itself is, chainsaws today, like a modern saw today, these machines have never been lighter, more ergonomically friendly, than ever before. The saws we use today are a lot more efficient and more nicer to use than, say, a chainsaw from 30 plus years ago, 30, 40 years ago, whatever the case may be. So, but what I'm getting at is one of the number one causes for lost time in the workplace with chainsaw use as well is musculoskeletal disorders. So sprains, strains, overuse of certain parts of the body, that sort of thing, right? So what I always tell my students in the courses as well, when we're talking about different sizes of chainsaws, is bigger isn't always better. You don't need to carry around that big 70 plus cc chainsaw all day long, right? So especially if you're someone unlike myself, there's a saw in my hands almost every day. But someone, say, and landscapers are a great example, where you guys use them so infrequently. A morning of chainsaw use, you're swinging around a tool that you're not used to using. You're going to become tired and fatigued quite quickly and quite easily. And operators need to be aware of that too, because when you get tired, you get complacent, you get lazy, and that's when the saw tends to remind you that that's often where accidents happen as well. So that's another thing that a lot of, especially part-time operators, need to keep in mind is, these saws are lighter, more user-friendly than ever before, but at the end of the day, if you're not used to using them, they really do wear on you. And, those musculoskeletal, sorry, I have trouble saying that word, muscular skeletal disorders really tend to come into play. And again, there's a lot of lost time among workers out there. I've, as an arborist for 15 plus years, I'm not ashamed to tell you, I've been in and out of physio my entire career. That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, and not to take anything away from landscapers. I mean, a lot of the masonry work that you guys do, I mean, it's hard on the body.
Mm-hmm.
So, so when it comes to the use of chainsaws, both rotational kickback and again, just that, the weight of the saw and the fatigue that can set in, I think those are definitely two very common hazards when it comes to the use of the actual tool itself. So,
For sure. And we don't have to cover everything, just, some of the new things. Of course, this is more just to, get people thinking about these things and hopefully, if they do use them as landscapers looking for, more training for themselves and their employees. So it doesn't have to be comprehensive, but no, appreciate that overview. So with all of that said, why is, and you've touched on this a bit, well, let's start with PPE. Why is PPE so important in chainsaw use?
PPE is something that I always tell my students. I always call it, your last line of defense. It's like, I guess sort of think of it as, police officers with their bulletproof vests, if you will, right? Like, I mean, I sort of had this mentality too when I was very young and starting in my career. People, they put on all this PPE and they kind of think they're invincible. Well, that's not the right way to look at it, right? That, like, your PPE is sort of like your last chance. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want our PPE to have to do its job, right? So that's why I really stress on the importance of knowing, understanding how the machine works, the mechanics and physics of it all, the physics of the material you're putting that saw into. So, of course, the wood, the physics of the wood, compression and tension, understanding all those things, that all comes before, the whole PPE thing and thinking like, well, I've got my PPE, I'll be fine. Okay. It's your last line of defense. So, you look at PPE sort of in from two different ways. So number one, it's the law. I mean, we can't be showing up to put in a retaining wall on a landscaping job and, everyone's wearing running shoes. It's just simply not legal. We have to have CSA approved work boots, and the head protection, the ear protection. There's a lot of components to the PPE we need to have in place for chainsaw use that are just simply law. You have to be wearing it, and but aside from it being law, more importantly, yes, it does help protect us should there be a mistake. And I've been, knock on wood, I've been pretty fortunate through my career where both myself and I haven't been part of anything too serious when it comes to an incident. But I have had my share of close calls that, if my PPE wasn't in place, it could have ended badly. I've taken some pretty good blows to the head from, debris from the canopy of trees, that sort of thing, and, if I hadn't been wearing my hard hat, I think, it definitely would have been a more serious situation. But it's your last line of defense. But again, and the thing is with PPE these days too, is the variety of PPE that's out there for, men, women, the sizing options that are out there, like a lot of these PPE companies have caught on to the fact, like, okay, if our stuff looks good and fits well, people are more willing to wear it, right? So, there's not really an excuse out there to say like, well, that doesn't fit me right or whatever. Like, okay, well then find something that fits you right, because otherwise you're just cutting corners and you're really making yourself vulnerable, that much more vulnerable. Probably the most important piece of PPE a chainsaw operator should wear, and this is, purely based on the majority of incidents that happen out there in terms of what area of the body that these chainsaw operators are becoming injured is your leg protection. So whether it be actual chainsaw pants or chaps, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, those protective chaps, those are so important because the majority of incidents out there with the saw making contact with the body are from the waist down. That leg protection is very important for protecting a lot of those vital arteries that are found in the upper portion in the inside area of your legs. So I've seen some nasty injuries. I've had a couple students. I had one student in my class years ago in particular. He was pretty much missing his entire left kneecap. He's lucky to be walking. That protection, that leg protection and foot protection, from the waist down from that chainsaw. I mean, if you're going to wear any piece of PPE, it's so important. But then, you're going out into woodlot to fell trees. Oh, I got my leg protection. It's like, okay, but if you're not wearing your head protection and all that, like, it's all so important. And another common neglected piece of PPE with chainsaw use is your ear protection. I mean, that's another piece of PPE that is required by law. Even myself, I've been in the industry long enough now where, I've always been diligent with my ear protection, but I can confidently tell you, working around chainsaws and chippers for 15 plus years, my hearing is not as good as it once was. And that's even wearing protection. So, it's PPE, again, last line of defense, but it is very, very important. And it's the law. You need to be wearing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've covered a lot of the points I was hoping to get to today. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to make sure to add?
Just some general points that I just kind of want to remind everyone out there. At the end of the day, again, to briefly go back to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, I mean, I remember seeing these posters on the walls in my high school back in the day, but we're all aware of the 3 rights of the worker, the right to refuse, the right to participate, and the right to know. It is very important. So my point is, a message to everyone out there is do what you feel is within your wheelhouse. No one needs to be a hero out there. No one needs to feel macho and, fight over the chainsaw to knock down that giant tree. Okay. Know what's within your abilities, right? Know your capabilities, your skill sets, and just stay within your wheelhouse and don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. There's always a better or more efficient way to do something. Okay. So I guess that's my big, that's a message I just want to relay on to everyone out there is, if you're not 100% comfortable with it, then just simply don't do it. It's important to have, your wits about you and make sure that there's a good understanding, amongst your crew. If you're working with a crew, have a good understanding of the job and what's required, the hazards that are present. Okay. So, and just, know when to walk away. Okay. Like I said, there's always someone or something out there that can make the job safer, easier, more efficient. And, if you're not comfortable with it, there's no shame in that. So
definitely,
there's still trees today that I, don't feel comfortable doing. It's one of those things, I've been doing this long enough where, I have no problem walking away from something if it's something that I don't think I'm capable of doing. And, everyone on the job site, everyone has to be thumbs up. Everyone has to be comfortable. And so, yeah, it's and I know that can be a difficult thing for a lot of employees sometimes, because it's, they don't want to disappoint the boss, or they don't want to be a burden on the crew kind of thing or whatever. But you know what, if you're working for somebody that doesn't have an understanding of that, and can't and doesn't have an appreciation for somebody who wants to be safe, and isn't, and somebody that isn't comfortable doing something that they don't feel they're qualified to do or whatever, then you know what, you probably shouldn't be working for that person in the first place. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice, and lots of really, really good advice today. Do you have anything coming up, or where can people, learn more about what you do, and maybe even get in contact?
Well, actually, I'm going to be seeing you guys in April. I usually do 1 or 2 courses at your headquarters in Milton there every year. But I mean, obviously they can find me through Landscape Ontario. But another resource, I mean, they can contact me directly. Obviously, you can find me at BPF Safety .com, and I do have my own website, so you can find all kinds of information on my program and what I do there. And they can I have a contact page, so they can reach me by email or by phone. And I also work alongside with a company called Total Rescue, which is heavily involved with you guys at Landscape Ontario as well. So Landscape Ontario Total Rescue is a company that often who you guys go through to get in touch with me to set up a day of training. So they're another resource as well, and they're based out of Fergus. So yeah, there's a few different avenues you can take to get a hold of me. So, but my website, bpfsafety.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Todd. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and a bit about your own story too. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for listening to the Landscape Ontario podcast. Be sure to subscribe to catch a new episode every month.